My parents shamed me in front of my whole family and told me to pay $82,000 for my sister's debt or stop calling myself their daughter. I stayed quiet, opened Grandpa's old ledger, and found the proof they prayed I'd never see. My name is Greer Merrow. I'm 33 years old. And last Labor Day, my parents put my price on a paper plate beside the potato salad. They told me in front of 18 relatives that my sister Sable had buried herself in $82,000 of debt, and if I wanted to stay part of this family, I had to be the one to save her. My father said it like a sentence from a judge. A family doesn't let one daughter drown while the other stands on shore. My mother cried into a napkin. My sister lowered her eyes like the victim in a story she had written herself. Everyone waited for me to nod, to be useful, to open my bank account like it was a family drawer. But what none of them knew was that my grandfather Hollis had kept one book they never got to edit. And once I opened that ledger, the $82,000 was no longer my sister's emergency. It became the number that explained my whole life. If you have ever been treated like the responsible one just because you stopped complaining, stay with me. Because this is the story of the day I learned that love can be used as a bill, but proof can still mark it paid. I live in Duluth, Minnesota, in a third-floor apartment above a closed tailor shop near Superior Street. In winter, the windows shake when the wind comes off Lake Superior, and in summer, the lake fog rolls through the streets like a secret nobody wants to say out loud. I work at North Point Mercy Hospital as a supply contract coordinator. That means I do not save lives in the operating room, and I do not wear a white coat, but if a surgeon needs gloves, tubing, clamps, monitors, replacement parts, or a machine repaired before Monday morning, my office is where the paper trail begins. I read purchase orders, I compare vendor contracts, I find strange fees hidden in long invoices, I know the difference between an emergency cost and a cost someone created by ignoring the first 5 warnings. My life is not fancy. I drive a 9-year-old Subaru with one door that freezes every January. I own 2 good coats, 3 work dresses, and 1 pair of boots I polish every Sunday night. My savings account had $31,860 the morning my parents asked me for $82,000. I know the exact amount because I check my accounts the way other people check the weather. It does not mean I am cold. It means I learned early that feelings do not stop overdraft fees. My family lives 40 minutes up the shore in Brindle Bay, a small lakeside town with a marina, 2 churches, 1 grocery store, and the old Merrow hardware and feed building sitting empty at the end of Pierce Street. My grandfather Hollis opened that store in 1968. He sold nails, work gloves, bags of feed, fishing line, snow shovels, hinges, window latches, and advice that came free only if he liked you. He died 2 years ago, and the store has been locked most of the time since then. My father, Calder, said he could not bear to sell it. My mother, Winora, said the building had family energy, which was her way of saying she wanted the memory without the maintenance bill. Grandpa Hollis was not soft, but he was fair. When I was 10, he taught me how to write a receipt on carbon paper. When I was 12, he made me count the register drawer twice because I was off by 75 cents. When I was 16 and crying because Sable had taken my birthday money to buy a denim jacket, he said, "Greer, if love is honest, it can survive being written down." I did not understand that sentence then. I thought he meant receipts. Years later, I learned he meant people. My sister Sable is 4 years younger than me, and she has always moved through life, like consequences, were something other people cleaned up after the party. She is beautiful in a way that makes strangers forgive her before she speaks. Pale green eyes, soft brown hair, a careful smile that can turn helpless whenever she needs the room to lean toward her. 3 years ago, she opened a home decor boutique called Sable and Shore Home Goods. Everyone in Brindle Bay acted like she had built an empire because she painted a sign white and sold candles for $34. My mother posted photos of the ribbon cutting for 2 weeks. My father told every man at the marina that his youngest daughter was a business owner. Grandpa had already died by then, but the store building still belonged to the estate, and Sable used the family name whenever it helped. Merrow's no small business, she would say, though she had never balanced a drawer in her life. I wanted her to succeed. I really did. I bought a lamp I did not need, shared her posts, and sent her a vendor contact from the hospital when she asked about wholesale linen suppliers. But wanting someone to succeed is not the same as agreeing to become the floor they land on every time they jump without looking. Labor Day at my parents' house always looked harmless from the outside. Folding tables in the backyard, fried walleye in aluminum trays, bowls of potato salad, baked beans, sliced tomatoes, and corn still warm from the grill. My father stood near the cooler with a towel over one shoulder, acting like he was hosting half the county instead of 18 people. My mother moved from table to table with sweet tea and soft questions that were never really questions. "You're staying for dessert, right?" Meant you had no choice. "You saw Sable's new haircut, didn't you?" Meant compliment it now. That year, I arrived with a pan of blueberry bars and a bag of paper plates because my mother had texted me twice that morning about needing the strong ones. I should have heard the warning in that phrase. Strong ones in our family did not get protected. Strong ones got assigned. Sable was sitting at the picnic table under the maple tree wearing a cream sweater, even though it was still warm outside. Her face looked pale, but not sick. Prepared. There is a difference. My cousin Bram gave me a quick side hug and then looked away. My Aunt Rhea Vossler, Grandpa Hollis's younger sister, sat near the back steps with her cane across her knees. She watched me longer than anyone else did, and I remember thinking she looked worried. Not sad, worried. After lunch, my mother stood up and tapped a spoon against her glass. It made a small, sharp sound that cut through the yard. My father stepped beside her. Sable covered her mouth with her hand before anyone had said a word. That was when I knew the stage had already been built, and I had not been told my role. My mother began softly. "We're grateful everyone is here today. This family has always come together when one of us is hurting." Then she looked at Sable, and Sable's eyes filled right on time. Most of you know Sable has been fighting to keep her business alive. She has tried so hard. But the debt has reached a point where we can't ignore it anymore. I set my cup down. "How much debt?" I asked. My mother did not look at me when she answered. $82,000. The yard went still. Even the kids near the fence stopped the throwing beanbags. My father cleared his throat and faced me. "Your mother and I cannot cover it. We've helped as much as we can. You have a steady job, Greer. You understand contracts. You understand money. Your sister needs you to take this over before vendors start legal action." I waited for the rest. "There is always a rest." My mother gave it to me. "We need you to pay the debt, honey, or at least take a loan in your name. You're the only one who can." I looked at Sable. She was crying now, but silently, the kind of crying that invites witnesses. "Did you know they were going to ask me this today?" I said. She wiped under one eye. "I didn't want it to happen like this." That was not a no. My father's voice hardened. "This isn't the time to interrogate your sister." My mother stepped closer to the table. "Greer, please don't embarrass her. She's already broken." I almost laughed, not because anything was funny, but because I finally saw the old shape of it. Sable broke things. I was asked to become glue. "I have $31,000 in savings," I said. "You know that, Mom. I told you when you asked if I could help with the property taxes last March." My mother's cheeks tightened. "You could get financing. You have good credit." There it was. Not help, not a contribution, my name, my credit, my future, wrapped in a family napkin and passed to Sable like another plate of food. My father put both hands on the back of a chair. He did not yell. Greer Merrow never yelled when disappointment could do the work for him. "A family doesn't let one daughter drown while the other stands on shore." Several relatives looked down. A few nodded. My mother whispered, "Your grandfather would have expected you to help." That was the moment something inside me cooled. Do not misunderstand me. I was hurt. I was embarrassed. My hands were shaking under the table. But when my mother used Grandpa Hollis as a witness for a demand he had not made, the hurt moved aside and made room for clarity. I stood up. "I am not writing an $82,000 check because everyone decided I was easier to pressure than Sable was to correct." My mother gasped. Sable started sobbing louder. My father said, "If you walk away from this, don't expect this family to stay open for you." I picked up my purse. Then maybe the door was never open. Maybe it was just a payment window. I left the blueberry bars on the table and walked to my car while 18 people pretended not to watch. The phone call started before I reached the highway. My mother called 3 times, my father once. Bram texted, "That was cold." Another cousin wrote, "She could lose everything." My mother sent a voice message so thick with tears I could barely understand it. "Greer, I don't know what happened to your heart." Sable sent a photo of herself with red eyes and the words, "I hope one day you understand what this did to me." I parked outside my apartment and sat in the car until the lake fog blurred the streetlights. Then I did what I do when people try to turn panic into my responsibility. I made a record, I printed the texts, I wrote down the calls. I opened a folder on my laptop titled Merrow Debt Question. Not revenge, not yet, just a place where the truth could sit without crying over itself. For 2 days, the pressure kept coming. My mother's friends messaged me on social media. My father sent one email with no greeting, only a paragraph about sacrifice. Aunt Rhea called once, but she did not lecture me. She said, "Greer, have you been to the store lately?" I told her no. She was quiet for a moment. "Your grandfather left some things in the back office. Your father said he looked through everything, but Hollis had hiding places even Dust didn't know about." I asked what she meant. She said, "I don't know. I only know he worried about you before he died." That sentence stayed with me all afternoon. By 5 o'clock, I could not focus on vendor rebates or delayed shipments. I told my supervisor I needed an hour, drove north, and parked in front of Merrow Hardware and Feed as the evening light turned the windows copper. The store smelled like dry wood, oil, old cardboard, and lake damp. The shelves were mostly empty, but the labels were still there. Screws, garden hose, rope, paint thinner. Grandpa's stool sat behind the counter with a split in the vinyl seat. In the back office, dust covered the metal desk, the filing cabinet, the wall calendar from the year he died. I stood there for a long minute because grief is strange. You think it has moved out, and then you find its coat hanging behind a door. I opened drawers, checked file boxes, looked under the desk. Nothing but old invoices and warranty cards. Then I remembered how Grandpa used to complain that no one ever checked the false bottom in the storage bench because people were lazy about furniture. The bench was under the window, stacked with old seed catalogs. I moved them, lifted the wooden seat, and found a green cloth-bound ledger inside a tin box. The ledger was heavy, the corners soft from years of hands. On the first page, Grandpa had written in black ink, "Merrow Private Obligations, not store accounts." Beneath that was a folded note with my name on it. Greer. My fingers felt numb before I opened it. The note was short. "If they ever ask you to pay for what was already charged to someone else, open page 114. Do not argue first. Read." I sat in Grandpa's chair and turned the pages slowly. Most were small family loans. $200 to my father in 1989 for a transmission. Paid. $600 to my mother in 1994 for dental work. Paid. College help for me, listed as graduation gift, no repayment expected. Then page 114. Sable Merrow, business advance. Under her name were 5 entries. $18,000 for boutique lease deposit. $22,000 for opening inventory. $16,000 for delivery van and insurance. $9,000 for branding, website, and launch event. $17,000 for vendor settlement and back rent. Total, $82,000. I read the total 3 times, not because I did not understand it, because I understood it too well. The debt my parents had put on me at a picnic table was not a new number. It was Grandpa's number. It was already written down. In the tin box below the ledger, I found copies of checks, signed receipts, and one document titled Family Business Advance Agreement. Sable's signature was at the bottom in purple ink. My father had witnessed it. My mother had signed under the words, "Acknowledged by parent." The agreement said if Sable did not repay the business advances, the amount would be deducted from her share of any Merrow estate distribution, including proceeds from the lake lot Grandpa had left to his grandchildren. One sentence had been underlined twice in Grandpa's handwriting. No other family member shall assume this obligation without written consent. I sat in the empty store with the ledger open on my lap, and for the first time in years, I felt protected by someone who was no longer alive. That night, I barely slept. I kept seeing my father's face at the fish fry, so certain, so disappointed, while his own signature sat in a tin box 40 minutes away. The next morning, I called Aunt Rhea and asked her to come to the store. She arrived in a red coat, leaning on her cane, her silver hair pinned back. I showed her the ledger. She did not speak for a long time. Then she touched the page with 2 fingers. "Hollis told me he was afraid they'd make you pay for Sable twice," she said. "Twice?" I asked. Rhea looked at me with tired eyes. "Once in money, once in silence." She read the agreement, then the checks, then the underlined sentence. Her mouth tightened. "Your father knew." I nodded. Saying it out loud would have made it too small. She folded the copies carefully. "If you need me in the room, I'll be there." I thanked her. She said, "Don't thank me. I was quiet too long." The ledger explained the $82,000, but it did not explain everything. I still needed to understand why Sable was acting like there was no way out when Grandpa had already written the way out into her inheritance. So I called Merritt Quill, Sable's former business partner. Merritt had left Sable and Shore after the first year. My mother had described her as jealous. Sable had called her unstable. That usually meant she had receipts. Merritt agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near the lift bridge. She arrived with a laptop bag and the face of a woman who had been waiting for someone to ask the right question. I told her my family was asking me to cover the boutique debt. Merritt laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Of course they are. Then she opened her laptop and showed me screenshots from an online shop called Northlight Nest. Different name, same product photos, same inventory tags, same handmade cedar shelves Grandpa's money had helped Sable buy for the boutique. Merritt explained it in a calm voice, which made it worse. Sable had moved part of the remaining inventory out of the store before telling vendors she had nothing left. She had sold pieces online under Northlight Nest for months. Not enough to pay all the debt, but enough that her crying at the fish fry was not the whole truth. Merritt had emails, shipping records, and photos. "I'm not trying to destroy her," Merritt said. "I just got tired of watching her call every consequence an attack." I asked if she would write a statement confirming the inventory transfer. She said yes before I finished the sentence. By the time I left that coffee shop, my folder had changed. It was no longer just Grandpa's ledger. It was a map of a family system. Sable created mess, my parents hid the exit, and then all three pointed at me like I was the emergency plan. My mother came to my apartment that Friday evening without warning. I opened the door because I wanted to see what she would do when there was no audience. She stepped inside wearing her church coat and carrying nothing. No food, no apology, no envelope, just the same soft face she used when she wanted someone else to feel cruel. "Greer, this has gone far enough," she said. "Your sister is not sleeping." I stood by the kitchen counter. "Neither am I." She ignored that. "You have always been stronger than Sable. You know that. Some children need more." I looked at her hands. They were shaking, but not from fear, from effort. She was trying to hold the old story together. "You keep calling me strong," I said, "because it sounds nicer than saying usable." Her eyes sharpened. "That is a terrible thing to say to your mother." I pointed to the green ledger on the table. "No, a terrible thing is asking me to pay a debt Grandpa already assigned to Sable's inheritance." My mother looked at the ledger, and all the color left her face. She did not ask what it was. She did not ask where I found it. She knew. That silence was the cleanest confession I had ever heard. She sat down without being invited. "Your grandfather was old," she said. "He wrote many things." I almost smiled. Not because I was amused, but because that was the best she had. "He wrote check numbers, dates, signatures, terms. Dad witnessed the agreement. You acknowledged it." Her voice dropped. "Sable cannot lose the lake lot." There it was. The lake lot. Grandpa had left a small piece of property outside Brindle Bay to both granddaughters, half and half. It was not fancy, but developers had been buying shoreline wherever they could find it. Sable's share would more than cover the debt someday. My mother did not want that touched. She wanted my credit touched instead. "Why?" I asked. "Why is her future protected and mine is available?" My mother pressed her lips together. "Because you recover." I let that sentence sit between us. Then I said, "I am done making recovery look like permission." She left 5 minutes later. She did not hug me. I was grateful for that. On Sunday morning, my father texted me. "Family meeting, store, noon, bring whatever you think matters." I knew he chose the store because he thought Grandpa's memory would shame me into softness. He forgot that Grandpa's memory was the only reason I was still standing. I made 6 copies of everything. Ledger page 114, the agreement, the check copies, the estate clause, Merritt's statement, and a simple summary I titled Merrow Family Debt Record. I did not decorate it. I did not use angry words. I used dates, amounts, names, and sources. At the bottom of the first page, I wrote one sentence. "This packet is not a request for repayment from Greer Merrow. It is a correction of responsibility." Then I put the papers into a plain folder and placed Grandpa's green ledger on top. I wore gray slacks, a black sweater, and the small brass watch Grandpa had given me when I graduated high school. Not because I wanted to look powerful, because I wanted to remember who had taught me that written truth does not need to shout. The store was unlocked when I arrived. My parents were already behind the counter. Sable stood near the old paint shelf wearing sunglasses on her head and no makeup, which was its own kind of costume. Bram was there, along with two cousins, Aunt Rhea, and my father's brother Teague. The room smelled colder than before. Dust floated in the light from the front windows. My father had set folding chairs in a half circle, like we were at a town meeting. He started before I sat down. "We are here because this family is close to breaking." I put the ledger on the counter. The sound was not loud, but everyone looked at it. My mother's eyes moved to my father. Sable stared at the floor. I said, "Before anyone asks me for $82,000 again, we're going to read the book Grandpa left behind." My father's jaw tightened. "This is not a trial." "No," I said. "A trial has discovery. This family prefers surprises." Aunt Rhea made a small sound that might have been a cough or approval. I passed out the packets. My mother did not take hers until I said it directly in front of her. "Page 1, I said. "Grandpa Hollis recorded 5 business advances to Sable between 2018 and 2020. The total is $82,000, the same amount you asked me to pay at the Labor Day fish fry." Sable lifted her head. "Grandpa helped me because he believed in me." "He did," I said. "And then he documented it because belief and liability are not the same thing." I read the 5 amounts: lease deposit, inventory, van, branding, vendor settlement. Each line took some air out of the room. My father picked up his packet, then set it down. He already knew what it said. "Page 2, I continued. "Family business advance agreement. Sable signed it. Dad witnessed it. Mom acknowledged it. The agreement says unpaid advances come from Sable's estate share, not from another family member." Teague leaned forward. "Calder, is that your signature?" My father did not answer. My mother said, "We were trying to protect Sable." I looked at her. "From the agreement she signed or from the truth that she signed it?" Sable's face twisted. "You don't understand what it feels like to fail in front of everyone." That was the closest she had come to honesty. I softened for half a second because I remembered the little girl who used to ask me to check under her bed for spiders. Then I remembered my mother at the picnic table, asking me to take a loan in my name. "I understand failure," I said. "I don't understand handing it to your sister and calling it love." My father stood up. Old habit. Standing made him feel like the room belonged to him. "Enough. A family doesn't let one daughter drown while the other stands on shore." He said it slower this time, like he was teaching me a final lesson. I looked at Grandpa's ledger, then at him. "No, but a family also doesn't tie a stone to one daughter and call it a life jacket for the other." No one moved. Even Sable stopped crying. My mother whispered, "Greer." I held up page 3. "There is more." Sable told everyone her business had no remaining assets. Merritt Quill provided a statement showing that inventory from Sable and Shore was moved and sold through an online shop called Northlight Nest. That money was not reported to vendors, to Grandpa's estate records, or to the family when you asked me to cover the debt. Sable stood so fast her chair hit the shelf behind her. "That is private." I looked at her. "So was my credit score. You were ready to use it anyway." Aunt Rhea slowly stood leaning on her cane. She had been quiet until then, but when she spoke, everyone listened. "Hollis told me he was worried they would ask Greer to pay twice. I didn't understand how. Now I do." She picked up the folded note Grandpa had left and read it aloud. Her voice shook only once. "If they ever ask you to pay for what was already charged to someone else, open page 114. Do not argue first. Read." She lowered the paper. He knew this family too well. My mother covered her mouth. My father looked toward the old register. Sable sat down again, not graceful this time, just emptied. Bram, who had texted that I was cold, stared at his packet like the pages had changed language in his hands. "I didn't know," he said. "No," I answered. "You didn't ask." My mother began to cry then, but it was different from the fish fry. At the fish fry, her tears had been a tool. In the store, they looked like something leaking from a cracked wall. "I was trying to keep us together," she said. "No," I said quietly. "You were trying to keep Sable untouched. There is a difference." My father finally spoke without performance. "What do you want?" It was the first honest question he had asked me in a long time. I looked around the store, at the empty shelves, at Grandpa's stool, at the ledger that had outlived everyone's version of events. "I want 3 things. I will not pay the $82,000. I will not take a loan. I will not let anyone in this family say I abandoned Sable when the records show you tried to abandon the debt onto me. My mother opened her mouth, but I kept going. The agreement says Sable's share covers the obligation. Follow it. Sell her portion of the lake lot, refinance against it, or make a repayment plan. That is between Sable, the estate, and whoever handles the papers. It is not between Sable and my name. Sable's voice came out small. So that's it? You're just done with me? I looked at my sister, and the anger in me did not disappear, but it moved aside enough for the truth. No, I am done being the proof that you never had to learn. If you want a sister, start by telling the truth without asking me to pay for it. She looked away. Maybe because she was ashamed. Maybe because she was angry. Maybe both. My father sat down. He looked older than he had that morning. My mother kept one hand on the counter near the ledger but did not touch it. I gathered the original documents, placed them back in the tin box, and slid the copies toward my father. Grandpa did not leave me money, I said. He left me proof. I wish he hadn't needed to. Then I picked up the ledger and walked out of the store with Aunt Rhea beside me. The aftermath did not arrive like thunder. It came in small, uncomfortable pieces. 3 days later, my father emailed me. The subject line was blank. The message said, I should not have asked you. I knew about the agreement. I thought there was another way. I read it twice and replied, there was another way. It was the agreement. My mother did not contact me for 11 days. Then she mailed a card with a lake painting on the front and 2 sentences inside. I am sorry I made your strength into a family resource. I do not know how to fix that yet. I did not rush to forgive her. Some apologies are doors. Some are only windows. You can see through them, but you do not have to climb inside. Sable's share of the lake lot was eventually sold to a neighbor who had wanted the strip of land for years. The sale covered most of the debt. She had to make arrangements for the rest, and for the first time in her life, those arrangements had her own signature at the bottom. Northlight Nest disappeared from the internet. Sable and Shore closed for good. A month later, I heard from Aunt Rhea that Sable had taken a job managing displays at a furniture store in Two Harbors. Not owner, not founder, employee. I do not say that with cruelty. There is dignity in working for a paycheck that does not require someone else to bleed first. Sable texted me once. I'm not ready to talk, but I know I lied. I answered, that is a start. Nothing more. A start is not a finish, and I had spent too many years rewarding beginnings like they were change. I keep Grandpa's green ledger in a safe deposit box now, not because I plan to use it again, but because some truths deserve better than a kitchen drawer. Every few weeks, I drive past the old hardware store. The sign still says Merrow Hardware and Feed, faded blue letters on white wood, stubborn against the lake wind. My father is talking about selling the building. My mother says it is time, maybe it is. A building cannot hold a family together when the people inside keep confusing silence with peace. I still live in Duluth. I still wake up early. I still compare contracts and read invoices and catch charges people hoped no one would notice. But now, when someone in my family calls me strong, I listen carefully for what they are really asking. I did not lose my family at that Labor Day fish fry. I lost the invoice they had taped to my name. I learned that love is not measured by how much one person can absorb before breaking. It is measured by whether the truth can enter the room and still be allowed to sit down. My parents demanded $82,000 for my sister's debt, and they thought my fear of being left out would cost more than my future. They were wrong. Grandpa's ledger did not make me cruel. It made me clear. And sometimes clarity is the quietest revenge of all. If someone has ever tried to turn love into a bill, remember this. You are allowed to ask who signed for the debt before you pay it. You are allowed to read the fine print on guilt. And if your name was never on the agreement, you are allowed to walk away without owing anyone an apology. Commentary, discussion, explanation, and lessons. Before we move away from Greer Merrow's story, let's slow down and look at what really happened beneath the surface. Because this was not only about $82,000. That number was important, yes, but the number was only the door. Behind that door was years of family pressure, years of unfair treatment, and years of one daughter being called strong, just so everyone else could keep using her. This is the part of the story where we stop following the events for a moment and start asking better questions. Why did Greer's parents think they could demand that much money from her? Why did Sable believe her sister should rescue her? Why did the whole family stay quiet at the fish fry? And why did Grandpa Hollis's ledger become more powerful than every emotional speech in the room? Let's begin with the Labor Day fish fry, because that scene tells us almost everything. On the outside, it looked like a normal family gathering. Food on the table, relatives in the yard, parents acting warm, everyone pretending it was just another holiday. But the moment Winora tapped the glass and Calder stood beside her, that family gathering turned into a public trial. Greer was not invited there for lunch. She was invited there to be surrounded. That is a very important detail. Her parents did not ask her privately because a private conversation would have given her space to think, breathe, ask questions, and say no. They asked her in front of relatives because pressure works better with witnesses. When 18 people are watching you, your no feels heavier. Your refusal looks colder. Your boundaries feel like betrayal. That was the trap. And notice how they framed the demand. They did not say, Greer, can we talk about Sable's debt? They said the family was hurting. They said Sable was drowning. They said Greer was stable. They used soft words to cover a hard request. That is how emotional manipulation often works. It does not always come as yelling. Sometimes it comes with tears, family language, and a plate of food in front of you. The request was not small. $82,000 is not a favor. It is not helping with groceries or covering one late bill. That amount could change Greer's entire future. It could damage her credit, drain her savings, and lock her into years of payments for a debt she did not create. But her parents wanted to make it sound like refusing was the real problem. This is where Greer's first lesson begins. She did not let their emotion define the facts. That is powerful. Many people lose their voice when someone cries in front of them. They begin to think, maybe I am being cruel. Maybe I should just help. Maybe peace is worth the cost. But Greer did something different. She looked at the truth. She knew she did not have $82,000. She knew she was being pushed, not asked. She knew her parents had already turned the relatives into a jury. So when she said, I am not writing an $82,000 check because everyone decided I was easier to pressure than Sable was to correct, she was doing more than refusing money. She was naming the system. She was saying, you are not asking me because it is fair. You are asking me because I have been trained to carry what other people drop. That line matters because Greer was not attacking Sable's pain. She was attacking the family pattern. There is a difference. Sometimes people will accuse you of being heartless when you refuse to continue a broken pattern. But saying no to an unfair demand is not the same as saying you do not care. Greer did care. The story shows that clearly. She had supported Sable's boutique, shared her posts, bought things she did not need, and wanted her sister to succeed. But support has a limit. Love has a limit when it starts requiring one person to disappear. A family can ask for help, but a family should not assign debt to the person who was not even part of the mistake. Then comes the pressure campaign, the calls, the texts, the messages from cousins, the emotional voice notes, the judgment from people who did not have the full truth. This part is very real. When a family does not want accountability, it often recruits an audience. Not because the audience knows the facts, but because the audience makes the target feel alone. Bram texts that Greer was cold. Other relatives suggest she should help. Sable sends a crying photo. Winora says she does not know what happened to Greer's heart. These messages are not meant to understand Greer. They are meant to move her back into her old role. Here is where we need to pause and ask ourselves something honest. How many times do families call someone selfish, only because that person finally stopped being available? Greer did not become selfish at the fish fry. She became visible. For years, she had been the quiet one, the steady one, the practical one. She helped with small bills. She handled problems. She did not make big scenes, so everyone got used to her being useful. And when useful people create boundaries, the people who benefited from their silence often act shocked. They say, you changed. But sometimes the truth is not that you changed. Sometimes the truth is that you stopped working for free. Now let's talk about Grandpa Hollis's ledger, because this is the heart of the story. The ledger is not just an old book. It is the voice of the one person who understood the family clearly. Hollis knew that love without records can become a weapon. He knew that people can rewrite memory. They can say, that never happened, or it was not like that, or you misunderstood. But numbers on paper are harder to bend. Signatures are harder to cry away. Dates do not care about family politics. That is why the ledger changes everything. Before Greer opens it, her parents control the story. After she opens it, the record controls the story. The most important reveal is not only that Sable owed $82,000. The deeper reveal is that the debt had already been assigned to Sable's own inheritance. That means Greer's parents were not simply panicking. They were hiding a solution. They knew there was an agreement. They knew Sable had signed it. They knew Calder had witnessed it, and Winora had acknowledged it. But instead of following the written agreement, they tried to move the burden onto Greer. Why? Because they wanted Sable protected from consequences. They wanted Sable's future untouched, while Greer's credit and savings were treated as available tools. That is a painful truth, and it gives the story its emotional weight. Greer was not only asked for money, she was asked to accept the family's decision that her future mattered less. This is why the line from Winora is so sharp, because you recover. That sentence says everything. Winora believed Greer could survive the damage, so she allowed the damage to be sent toward Greer. Many families do this. They decide one child is fragile and one child is strong. Then they protect the fragile one from every consequence and use the strong one as support. But strength is not an open wallet. Strength is not permission. Strength does not mean someone can keep taking from you because you learned how to stand up after falling. That is one of the biggest lessons from Greer's story. Do not let people turn your strength into a family resource. Being dependable is a good thing. Being responsible is a good thing. Being calm under pressure is a good thing. But if people only value those qualities because they can use them, then they are not honoring your strength. They are exploiting it. Greer's mother kept saying Sable could not handle consequences. But that is exactly why Sable needed them. Consequences are not always punishment. Sometimes consequences are the only teachers someone has left. If Greer had paid the $82,000, Sable would not have learned accountability. Winora and Calder would not have learned honesty. The family would have learned only one thing. Greer can still be pressured. Merritt Quill's part gives the story another layer. At first, Sable looks like a failed business owner who is overwhelmed and ashamed. That is already serious, but it could still make us feel sympathy. Then Merritt reveals that Sable had moved inventory into another online shop and sold items quietly. This does not mean Sable had enough money to solve everything, but it does mean she was not fully honest. She was asking for rescue while hiding part of the truth. That matters. When someone asks for help, honesty is the minimum price of that help. You cannot ask another person to risk their future while you hide your own choices. Sable wanted the benefits of being helpless and the benefits of keeping control. That is not vulnerability, that is manipulation. Still, the story does not make Sable a cartoon villain. That is important too. Sable is insecure. She is afraid to fail. She has built an image of herself as a creative business owner, and that image is falling apart. She does not know how to stand in front of people and say, I made bad choices. So she chooses the easier path. Let Greer carry it. This is wrong, but it is also human. The story becomes stronger because the characters are not just evil or good. They are weak, afraid, proud, and unfair. Real family damage often looks like that. It is not always one big monster. Sometimes it is ordinary people choosing comfort over truth again and again until someone else is buried under the weight. The final meeting in Grandpa's old hardware store is powerful because the location itself becomes a witness. This is not a living room. It is not a fancy office. It is the place where Hollis worked, counted money, wrote receipts, and believed in written truth. Greer does not bring anger into that room. She brings documents. That is why the scene works. She is not trying to win by volume. She wins by clarity. When Calder says, "This is not a trial," Greer answers, "A trial has discovery. This family prefers surprises." That line is sharp because it exposes the family's method. They do not want a fair process. They want emotional surprise. They want to corner her before she can prepare. Then Greer reads the packet. Not with rage, not with drama, but with control. This is another lesson. When you have proof, you do not always need a big speech. You need patience. You need order. You need the courage to let the truth be boring enough to be undeniable. Dates, amounts, signatures, agreements. These things may not look emotional, but in this story, they carry deep emotion. Every line in the ledger says, Greer was not crazy. Greer was not selfish. Greer was not abandoning her sister. Greer was being set up. One of the strongest lines in the whole story is when Calder repeats his phrase, "A family doesn't let one daughter drown while the other stands on shore." At first, that phrase sounds moral. It sounds loving. It sounds like something a father says to remind his children of family duty. But Greer turns it around. A family also doesn't tie a stone to one daughter and call it a life jacket for the other. That reply is the emotional center of the commentary. Because yes, families should help each other. Yes, families should care when someone is drowning. But you do not save one person by drowning another. You do not create justice by moving pain from the favored child to the responsible child. That is not love. That is damage with a nicer name. Aunt Ria's role is quiet but very important. She is not the main hero, but she gives the truth support. In many family conflicts, the silent witnesses matter. Sometimes there are people who know something is wrong, but they stay quiet because they do not want conflict. Ria admits this in her own way. She says she was quiet too long. That line is a lesson for every bystander. If you see someone being used, your silence helps the system keep working. You may not be the person making the demand, but if you know the truth and stay silent, the person being pressured feels even more alone. Ria cannot erase the past, but she can stand beside Greer when it counts. That matters. The ending is not fake perfect, and that makes it better. Greer does not get a huge check. She does not suddenly have a perfect family. Her mother does not fall to her knees. Sable does not instantly become mature. Calder sends a small apology, but even that apology does not fix everything. This is closer to real life. Sometimes truth does not repair the family. Sometimes it only stops the lie from continuing, and that is still victory. Greer's win is not that everyone loves her better. Her win is that nobody can honestly say she owes the debt anymore. Her win is that her name is removed from the family invoice. Let's take the life lessons clearly. First, never let public pressure force you into a private financial decision. If someone asks you for a major sacrifice in front of others, that is already a warning sign. Real respect gives you time to think. Second, emotional pain does not cancel personal responsibility. Sable was hurting, but her hurt did not give her the right to hide facts and push debt onto Greer. Third, written records matter. Families often say, "We don't need documents." But when money, property, loans, or debt are involved, documents protect relationships from false memory. Fourth, being strong does not mean you must be endlessly available. You can be kind and still say no. You can love someone and still refuse to finance their bad choices. Fifth, truth may not make everyone happy, but it can make you free. There is also a lesson about parents. Winora and Calder thought they were protecting Sable, but protection without accountability becomes harm. When parents rescue one child from every consequence, they do not make that child safe. They make that child dependent. They also damage the child who is always asked to be mature. Greer was not loved less in words. Her parents probably told themselves they loved both daughters. But love is not only what you say. Love is what you protect. Love is what you ask. Love is whose future you are willing to risk. In this story, Greer finally sees that her parents had been protecting Sable's comfort more than Greer's life. And for anyone listening who has been the responsible one, this story may feel personal. Maybe you are the person everyone calls when bills are due, when someone needs a ride, when a crisis happens, when a parent needs help, when a sibling fails again. Maybe people praise you for being calm, but they never ask if you're tired. Maybe they say, "You can handle it," when what they really mean is, "We do not want to ask the person who caused the problem." Greer's story is a reminder that you are allowed to stop. You are allowed to ask, "Why is this mine?" You are allowed to say, "Show me the agreement." You are allowed to step away from a role you never agreed to play. The most beautiful part of this story is that Greer does not become cruel. She becomes clear. She does not scream at Sable. She does not destroy her parents for entertainment. She does not use the ledger to punish everyone beyond what the truth requires. She simply refuses to carry a debt that was never hers. That is mature revenge. Not revenge that burns the whole house down, but revenge that turns on the lights and lets everyone see who moved the furniture. Sometimes the strongest ending is not taking everything back. Sometimes the strongest ending is saying, "This stops with me." So when Greer says, "I did not lose my family, I lost the invoice they had taped to my name," that line gives us the final meaning. The family had confused Greer's place with her usefulness. They made her belonging conditional on payment. But real family should not charge admission. If the price of staying loved is losing yourself, then the relationship is already broken. Greer did not break it by saying no. She revealed where it was already cracked. That is what we learned from Grandpa's ledger. It was not just paper. It was memory with a spine. It was proof that someone had seen the pattern before Greer was ready to name it. It gave her the courage to stop arguing emotionally and start speaking factually. And maybe that is the final lesson for all of us. When guilt gets loud, find the truth that stays still. Write things down, keep records, ask questions. Do not let tears erase signatures. Do not let family language hide unfairness. And do not pay a debt just because someone placed it in front of you with your name already written on it. Greer's story is not only about money. It is about identity. It is about the moment a woman stops being the family solution and becomes a person with her own future. It is about understanding that love should not require financial self-destruction. It is about learning that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for everyone is refuse to keep the lie alive. Because when the wrong person keeps paying, the right person never learns. And when silence keeps protecting the pattern keeps growing. So if you take one thing from this story, take this. Helping someone should not mean becoming responsible for every choice they refuse to own. A debt does not become yours because someone cries. A family demand does not become fair because it happens at a picnic table. And strength does not mean you have to stand on shore while someone ties the rope around your waist and calls it love. Greer walked away with her name, her credit, her future, and her grandfather's truth. And sometimes that is the cleanest kind of justice. The end.